Hey, Kevin. Thanks again for joining me for another episode of Indoor Recess. So last night was the NHL Draft. How did you think it went, and what did you think of the Leafs' 15th overall pick?
Well, the draft went like pretty automatically. Like there was hardly any trades. There was a trade earlier in the day, Max Domi going to Columbus, and
Yep.
then Calgary traded down later in the draft. But everything sort of went like clockwork. I was actually
Yeah.
a little bit impressed that it sort of went without hitches. There were little surprises. Alex Trebek doing something, and
Yeah.
Marchek's widow doing something, and then the Leafs had this weird moment with Mitch Marner
And Morgan
announcing
Riley.
the pick and Morgan Riley looking off like, what do I do? Here I unroll. So it was pretty funny. There were some, meme moments, I suppose. Given, it's a pandemic and what else are you going to expect? It was fine. I think had all the general managers been together and like, as they would normally be together for 3 or 4 days from the awards in Vegas to wherever the draft is, I think there might have been more trades. There might have been a bit more action because they might have been a little bit drunk when they were making a trade. Something happened. But, for what it was, I thought the television was fine. I thought Sportsnet did a good presentation. Brian Burke was entertaining. Everybody else, Mike Fuda was really, really informative. And then they have that moment where Columbus takes a player no one had, not even in their top 100.
What did Brian Burke say? Is like, I think he's a winger or something like that?
They tried to guess.
Yeah.
Burke was great on winning the lottery. What a great general manager are you? Won the lottery 2 years in a row. So yeah, smart general manager. But the Leaf pick, I didn't know anything about him. I don't follow the KHL nearly as closely as others. But all the research I've done on him since suggests that he is going to be a pretty good winger. Like it is pretty impressive for an 18-year-old to be playing in the men's league in the KHL.
Mm-hmm.
He's got height. He doesn't have weight yet, but I'm sure he'll put that on. He's pretty slight, but if he plays at 175 or 180, he'll be fine. He's a playmaker, and he goes to the net, and he does all the sorts of things that you want a winger to do. And like Kyle Dubas says, he's got a couple of defensemen in the minors ready to make the leap, and what he doesn't have are wingers in the minors ready to make the leap. He's traded off so many of them. That this guy will be ready in 3 or 4 years, and he'll be entering his prime just as your William Nylanders and your Mitch Marners are getting 30-year-old age, and maybe you're thinking about something different. So it's a smart move from the, just keep it rolling, keep the pipeline coming at all positions.
Yeah, you made this comment last night on Twitter about how Leafs Twitter kind of turned on a player because, the right-handed D is such a big ask. I mean, like, it's the draft. So what do you have to say to those Leafs fans who might be like,
well, sure, they need a right-handed D. Sure, they need more grit. Sure, they need to be tougher to play against. But they need that. They need that for whenever the season starts, supposedly January 1st. So they'll address that via trade, and they'll address that via free agency. That's my understanding. Mm-hmm. When you really do want to draft the best players available, you can develop them, and then you trade them. If you have too much at one position and you have less at another, you trade one for the other, and that's what you do. Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty good to value guys that can score, because teams value guys that can score a lot, and so then you can trade that for something that you really need. It's not saying they're going to trade this guy, but that's what they've done. They've traded Carl Grundstrom, they traded Trevor Moore, they've traded others to get what they need. Mm-hmm. They develop them, and then either they make the Leafs or they move on to another team.
Cool. So with Amirov, is that how you pronounce his name? Amirov?
I'm guessing yes.
Amirov, Rodion Amirov.
I do it with the Russian Amirov.
Yeah, Amirov.
It's basically one syllable, Amirov.
You've actually been to the town, a city.
The town of Ufa. Yes.
Yeah, Ufa.
I have here I have a sweatshirt from Salavat Ulayev, and so whenever I go in an international tournament, this is the World Juniors in 2013. Nail Yakupov was from this team. He was the first overall pick by the Oilers that year. So whenever I go, I like to pick up a sweatshirt or a hat or something like that from an obscure thing that I've never heard of. I'd never even wear this, but I do like to have it. Now, Salavat Ulayev himself, it's like calling a team the John A. McDonald. He was a local
Oh,
hero
okay, I
in that
see.
it just doesn't mean anything. They're not the Ulayevs from Salavat. They are the George Washingtons or the
I see.
right. That's what they are.
I know nothing about Russian history.
He's a Russian war hero. Not even Russian. It's more regional from where they are. It's very remote. They're in the mountains. It's an oil town. I have so many funny stories from there. I'll give you just a couple. Getting into the cab from the airport to throw your suitcase into the trunk, the cab driver opens the trunk, and in his trunk, nothing but assault rifles. Just throw that in there, and I'll drop you off at the hotel.
Oh wow.
Yes, Mr. Cab Driver.
It's like it's such stereotypical Russian.
And then walking around, there was a nice mall across the street from the rink, and just kind of walking around it. In our malls, you might see these center aisle kiosks selling cell phone stuff or jewelry. They were selling hand grenades and ammunition in the center, with the nice young person like trying to get your attention to come on over and buy. It was armor.
That's crazy.
It's a different world over in Russia. It's just a completely different world in Russia.
So when Amirov actually makes his way to Toronto, I guess you can ask him about the merchandise
and I did do karaoke one night, and I sang "Back in the USSR" in a Russian bar, and people danced. So I felt really good about myself.
Crazy, that's awesome. Anyway, so back to the Leafs. You did mention a couple days ago you don't see the Leafs. Well, at least Kyle Dubas said that he has no plans of trading Frederik Andersen. Is that discussion done? Do you think it's going to continue? The speculation among Leafs fans. So what do you have to say about the goalie situation with the Leafs?
Well, personally, I got no issues with Frederik Andersen as their goalie. I think he's a great goalie. I think fans have turned on him for a weird reason that has nothing to do with how good he is. They haven't won a round in the playoffs, period. And they were terrible defensively this year, period. So it's not his fault. I still think he's a great goalie. I think he's a game-saving goalie. He can make saves to turn the team around. You're not going to find a goalie like him. Where I will say that they might trade him is because he's got this weird thing about his contract. He is very valuable to a team that wants to expand their cap space without actually expanding how much money they're paying. So the Leafs owe him $1 million in salary, but he takes up $5 million in cap space. So a team might over-offer something so that they can save themselves a bit of money and use up the cap room, because in this year, with maybe no fans and maybe a shorter season, maybe budget's constrained, a contract like that is valuable to every team of the NHL. So I won't say that they won't trade him, but they're not going to trade him because they don't like him as a goalie.
Yeah.
They're going to trade him because some team is going to overpay to get that contract. And so maybe they get something much better back. And there's a lot of goalies available in free agency. So, the Leafs can backfill in free agency and get something else for.
Yeah, and Jack Campbell is around for a little longer too.
Yeah, they extended him, and there's some like Jacob Markstrom from the Canucks. He'll get a lot of money.
Yeah,
and he'll do well.
And there's Murray. So maybe there become sort of like tandem situation.
I'm not guaranteeing that will happen, but that will be the motivation for it. You'll see the return on him being very, very high, considering what a lot of fans think how good he is or how not good he is.
Right. Fair enough. And with right D, I mean, like, there's always different names popping up. Obviously, Pietrangelo is the big one. I mean, I've heard Gudas. Like, so where are the options for the Leafs there in right D?
Tyson Barrie? How does that sound?
We brought this up before.
It's going to be
nuts.
It's going to be an interesting market because the flat cap, and again, all the same reasons that Freddie will be a valuable commodity on the trade market. These defensemen are out there looking for big paydays. I don't think they're going to get them. So I think what the Leafs are going to do is they're going to wait. They're going to see what the market is and see if they can maybe overpay just a little bit for a right-handed defenseman. I don't think they're going to be in on Pietrangelo. There's a left-handed defenseman out there, TJ Brody, who's kind of like Tyson Barrie. He had an off year this year, so his market value was down, but he has primarily played the right side, and he was the guy the Leafs wanted ahead of Barrie last year.
With the Kadri turn it down, yeah.
Trade, right? So I would wonder if they'll go after TJ Brodie from the Calgary Flames. Even though he's left-handed, he's comfortable on the right side.
Cool. And I guess the last thing, Bedman's, hoping for a January 1st start with the next season. Do you think it's going to happen? Like, what's your prediction for, I guess, the next?
I absolutely think the NHL will have a season next year. They pulled off their playoff. They did fine. I cross my fingers that life will slowly return to normal and we'll be all fine in a year's time or so. But I think the NHL will find a way to have a season. I personally don't think it will be 82 games. It certainly won't be 82 games if there's no fans or limited fans.
Mm-hmm.
The league needs revenue. So to play games without fans is to simply lose money. So I would imagine that they might go down to a 48-game schedule or maybe a 60-game schedule. I imagine they might play in bubbles to start. Like I can see the Canadian teams just playing each other for a little while until you can cross the border. So they have there are options that they have that they can do. I imagine there's going to be hockey. I don't know we know what it's going to look like. That's all I can say.
I mean, hopefully we see that in January. So thanks again, Kevin, and I guess I'll catch you next time.
All right. Thanks a lot.
See you.